Thank you for joining the podcast for Beyond the Banter. Before we get started, you need to know some important information. If you need support immediately, please reach out to one of the following organisations. Lifeline on 131114, Beyond Blue on 1300224636, or Men's Line Australia on 1300 789 978. If your life is in danger, please call 000 immediately.
G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Banter. In Darwin with Chris, filming a few podcasts, getting ready to get them released over the next couple of months. We've had a ball. I'm looking forward to going fishing this afternoon. This is the last one for today, but looking forward to that and doing a bit of croc hunting. But today we're joined by a very special guest, David Contarini from Better Man Counselling. And I just wanted to do a quick intro before I pass over to yourself, David. But when we first launched this podcast, we were going into the unknown. We didn't really know what the reaction or the expectation was going to be. And you were one of the first ones to reach out to me, both on email and on the phone and have a chat. And for myself, it was very overwhelming. We had set up all this stuff and we're trying to get as much information and make it as impactful as possible. And we're blown away by the amount of support we've got. We've got some friends that are psychologists and have their own private practices in Sydney, and we've had some people come on and talk about different areas. But you hit I got captured by our conversation from the word go. I mean, you were out exercising, talking to me on the phone, and I was like, wow, this guy's like, I think you're running up a mountain with weights on or something, and you're still talking to me. And I was like, wow, this is passion, But look, you've been there from day one for us, and we wanted to introduce you to the wider community of Beyond the Banter, because we really want you to be a part of this journey and be a regular with the podcast, and we're so humbled by the support that you've given us and the advice you've given us so far. I'll throw over to yourself to go over, I guess, what has got you to this point in your life and how you're assisting other males in breaking down the stigma, but also helping him on the right path to being a better version of themselves. So I'll throw over to yourself, mate, to do an intro, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Great to be here. And hey, Topher, how you going? Thanks so much for the invite. And you're right. I saw the Beyond the Banter feed come through on social media, and I was really taken aback. And there are other platforms, and of course there are other podcasts that are going on. But I just love the rawness and the passion that you both had, and I think we had a sort of commonality with the passing of Paul Green. And in another life, when I used to work in professional sport, I actually did meet Paul a couple of times, and again, a very passionate man. And what resonated with me was, how could someone just not know? How could we as a tribe of men, particularly that weekend where he spent a lot of time with his other peers, how could people not know? And it's so tragic, that news, whenever it hits our airwaves about someone of high profile, whether they're high profile or not, just anyone that is taken from us like that, where we say we just can't compute. We just go, that should not happen. How can that happen? We know that there's something wrong and something broken. So the opportunity to join you guys and to probably give my experience and as a working counsellor, some input was that's been a great opportunity. So who am I? David Contarini. I started life as a physical education teacher. I did that for a couple of years in North Queensland, and then moved across to hospitality for a while. And then I moved down to the bright lights of Sydney, and had a career change and worked in major events. So you could probably remember that time, Chris, in the lead up to the 2000 games in Sydney. It was an amazing time, and I was part of that. We had a number of venues in Darling Harbour, which most of the major events were happening out of. So I did that till about 2002, and I came back to Brisbane, and I worked for the Brisbane Broncos for a number of years. I was their game day operations manager. So all the froth and bubble that you see on television, the cheerleaders, from the cheerleaders to the signage to the pyrotechnics that go off when someone scores, that was all me. So that was a really exciting time. Interesting to be part of professional sport. So then sort of moved out of that and then went back into major events in Brisbane. I was the events manager at South Bank here in Brisbane for a number of years, and then kind of went back to my roots of education. So my last gig was 12 years with RACQ teaching road safety to over 60,000 students a year throughout Queensland. An amazing opportunity to really teach the hard skills of keeping students alive, whether it's crossing the road or whether it's first their foray into driving. How do they keep safe as passengers and drivers of motor vehicles? Because we all know that the number one fatality of people between the ages of 15 and 25 is that they will die in a car. Interestingly, when that gets to 43 years of age, it then becomes suicide. So, again, where are we getting this so wrong? So I did that for 12 years. And then during that time, I decided, I'm sort of getting a bit long in the tooth. How do I sort of ride this horse home? How do I finish my working life? Do I want to stay in corporate life, or do I want to just sort of try and give back or do something that all of my life experience and all of my time in corporate land and all those thousands and millions of interactions and personal growth and all that, and it all sort of came together. I thought, why don't I become a counsellor? So I did my study, and then soon after graduating, I started my own practice called Better Man Counselling, and my niche, as the name suggests, is just men. So and it's been an interesting journey, a great journey, and to think that now I can contribute to men. The men's life. They're coming to me with their issues, and I have the direct ability to influence their thinking and their actions, so that they're getting a better, more meaningful and richer life. So that's me in a nutshell, mate.
Mm-hmm. So I've got a question. I think you've written one. We've got a notepad here, right down. So the driver safety that you're teaching, so is that something they're taught in the later stages of high school in preparation for them getting their license? Like, is that a part of a mandatory sort of thing, or is it how's that work?
Yeah, so it was just a voluntary. So a school would contact RACQ and say, here you've got some education programs. And depending on the age of the students, we would then send a team. So we had education programs from preppies, so as in, preparatory school, year 1 right up to year 12. And they're obviously really different, so they're very age appropriate when it comes to content. I think the biggest work we did, Chris, or the most valuable, was in that year 12 space. I mean, these are kids that are getting into cars with people they don't know. They're leaving parties and gatherings and all that sort of thing. And they're getting into cars because they've got no other way of getting home. Their bus or their train left the station hours ago. It's 3:00 in the morning. I'm at a party I'm not supposed to be at, and yet I've got to somehow get home without my parents, finding out or knowing where I'm not supposed to be or whatever. So we taught students how to prepare for how to get home from those situations. If you're stuck in a car and in the next 20 seconds, you can just feel that there is going to be something wrong. The driver is driving erratically. Perhaps they're even drunk. Maybe they're getting, they're getting distracted on their phone. this is going to end up bad if I don't do something. So we used to teach these skills of what's in your control. How do you get out of a car where you feel as if something bad is about to happen? They're going to crash or they're going to run off the road, or like, how do you do that? What are the words that you have to use to stop the car? So it was incredible strategies about what is in your control. What can you do in this moment that is going to potentially save your life? So that's the sort of skills that we would teach.
I was just going to ask, not putting you on the spot, and if you don't know, please, but in that age group, is there numbers that suggest males are at a higher risk than females, or is there any sort of data?
No, we know that, mate. A male driver, not only a male driver has more probability of dying, a male driver with male passengers is even worse. But also, having said that, there is a high probability that the female in the car will die. And the reason for that is that female passengers don't speak up. They don't speak up. I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to feel embarrassed. I don't want to look bad in front of my boyfriend, or whatever it might be. So the tragedy of that is that if you don't speak up, then you may not live to tell the tale. So what an amazing segue into the work you guys are doing. What if men were to speak up?
Yeah. I mean, this is what I liked about this story when we talked the other day. You mentioned a small amount of this, and you mentioned that there was a no questions asked phone call, and I think that particular story, and I'll ask you to elaborate on that, can really tie in to blokes and their mate, and so tell me about that little, I think we, on the phone call, called it a little buddy system.
Yeah, absolutely, Topher. So what we used to do is teach this strategy, and it was called the one phone call, no questions asked. So what that means is, if you're a teenager, you're going out to a party, you're having a good time, you suddenly realise it's 12 o'clock and I'm supposed to come home now. Not only that, but the lift that you had, the designated driver has fallen through. You just simply can't get home, and all of a sudden, it's past midnight, and what implications is this going to be on my parents? So if we think about that risky situation, what will happen inevitably is a teenager will start taking risks to get home. So they're going to ask around the party, hey, who's going to the northern suburbs of Brisbane? Can I crack a lift? And oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, come in with me. Now you don't know what that driver's been, that potential lift home. You don't know what that driver has, what habits they've had through the night. Have they taken a drug? Are they over the limit? Are they tired? Have they slept for not 17 hours beforehand? Like, what are the signs of the fatal five? Maybe, and they will be a P plate. Maybe they're even a P plate. I don't know. But all of a sudden, all these things start lining up that increase their risk of a fatality. So what we did was we came up with this strategy to say, look, in year 12, you must sit down with your parents, okay? Because you're going out more, you're giving more responsibility, you're doing things on your own, but you do have a responsibility to come home safely. What are the plans that you have? So you sit down, you have a conversation with your parents to say, look, mum and dad, if I find myself in a situation which is high risk, I can't get home, I'm stranded somewhere, I may even be a little bit drunk, or I may even be at a party I'm not supposed to be. I'm not in the place where I told you I was going to be, right? My back is against the wall, I'm about to do a risky behaviour. Now, instead of doing that, I want to call upon you to come and pick me up. But I don't want you to get mad, I don't want you to go crazy and yell at me down on the phone, I just want you to come and pick me up. One phone call, no questions asked.
Love that. See, that's what I love, right? And I think you swap out the teenagers and you swap out the parents, and you make it a person and their best mate. And the rest of the story sounds almost the same, right? I'm in a bad place. I've got I want a responsibility to come home safe. Who can I reach out to? Who can I open up to? And we can change that story around. Have a conversation with your mate early.
Have a plan.
You and me, we talk to each other. But we need to sit down and have that conversation and go, mate, if I ring you at 3 o'clock, don't ask me questions, but don't get mad at me. Don't tell me what I should and shouldn't do. Let's just listen.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a really, really, when he told me this on the phone, I was blown away, wasn't I? I was like, oh my God, tell me more. And I really loved it because it was so easy to transfer. And I don't want to steal it from you and RACQ, and but I think we can adapt some of that learning and really open up amongst ourselves and our good mate, and not have 10, 15 mates, just one good mate that you can call at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Absolutely, Topher. And you know what? Just the other day, I've got a great mate of mine who's, he's just doing it tough at the moment. He really is. And we went for a walk, and we got up to the Glasshouse Mountains. It's a beautiful walk up the mountain there, and you have a wonderful view of the Sunshine Coast hinterland. And I said, mate, I know you're doing it tough at the moment. I really am. But I said, I love you as a mate, and I'd hate for anything to fall ill for you, because we've known each other for a long, long time, and I know you're doing it tough. I said, how about this idea? I said, I want you to call me. I don't care what time it is. I don't care what day it is. When you're feeling really down and you need to have a chat, because your mind is going over time. It's giving you scenarios that's never given before, and it's giving you a way out that is probably not it's not rational. I want you to call me because I'm there for you, and I'll listen and I won't judge. And I think if we can instill that buddy sort of system, we call it something, whatever it might be, but he knows now that he's got a way out. He knows that he can call me at any time of the day, any time of the night, whenever it is, and I'll be there for him. And it's just one person. It's not, God, who can I call? Oh no, I'm going to wake them up. Oh no, I can't call them because they know so-and-so and they're going to tell. No, it's no judgment. It's just call me.
That is awesome.
Because if that's not available to you, right, you then get through that night, and then the next day you don't bring it up again because it's moved on, right? So going back to what you originally said with Paul Green, is that why we're not talking about this stuff? Because in that moment we don't have that person to reach out to, and then it becomes almost too late.
It's one less barrier, really, isn't it? It's I know who I got to call, and I'm going to make that call.
The thing is, I think that the term "I'm there for you whenever you need, give me a call" is thrown out, right? You do that with all your mates. You do that with people you've just met. If you need anything, give me a call anytime, 24/7, doesn't matter. But actually taking it to the next level and having a commitment or a pact with someone else to say, hey, I will be that person, and if I need you, you're going to be that person for me.
Like a verbal contract.
It's raising the stakes dramatically. And that's why I love this. And I only heard about this morning when Chris was telling me about it. And, mate, yeah, I'm blown away, but I can see it actually working, because this whole concept and this whole idea, it's about people buying into it and wanting to be a part of what we're doing. If it's not for you, that's fine. You don't have to listen. You don't have to follow the podcast. You might be a mutual friend and showing us support and stuff like that. But if it's not for you, that's fine. But if it is for you, we're going to help facilitate. All three of us here are going to facilitate that to make sure that we build this thing and make it as powerful and as possible we can. And I'm sure you've seen massive results with these students and doing this, and I can't wait to see where that goes. I'm in technology. I work in technology, right? So I've got a little bit of a technology question. Do you think the adoption of Uber and ride sharing plays a part of that, where people can actually, and kids I'm talking that are at these parties and whatever, now have in their phone access to a lift home or to get from A to B without taking the risk of loading up their car? Has that ever come up in the conversation and training? And this is just because I'm in technology and I love technology and how it helps people. But I'd love to know if that.
Yeah, it does, Chris. It does, actually. And I don't know the advances of the program because I haven't been exposed to it for a couple of years now. But yeah, certainly Uber came up and other things. But at the end of the day, like even teaching them, we used to teach them, and a lot of students actually didn't know this, is that you can actually get in a cab and you can get that cab to take you to, your destination, and they can actually allow you to get the money out of the house. Like if you're a teenager, look, can you just wait there? I've got to go and get money and come back down. So even if you don't have the money, you can still pay for the cab when you get home. So we used to teach them, that sort of thing. But we used to try and just eliminate all of that, all of those barriers. And by the way, just for the record, the fastest way to get out of a car that, again, is you're looking at this situation going, this is going to end badly, tell the driver that you're about to vomit. Tell the driver, I'm about to be sick in your car, and you can almost play act, and they will stop that car quicker than what you can believe. No one's ever going to turn around and go, I'll make sure you get all this, your vomit in the cup holder. They're going to stop.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Also, I think that's a great intro. I mean, it's been, I think we're just going on 20 minutes talking about that, and that's just one little part of your experience and what you've done. Mate, tell us a little bit more, I guess, about the difference between a counsellor, psychologist, and psychiatrist, and I guess how each play their role and how you fit into the scheme of things.
Yeah, great question, Chris. Look, I guess if we start from the very top as a psychiatrist, I mean, a psychiatrist is they've got to go through medical training. They're a doctor first, and so it's a branch of medicine really, and they're dealing with really hardcore cases of mental health, and they can actually prescribe medication, for people's mental health. So in a nutshell, that's kind of, the top of the tree. And then a psychologist can't give medication, but a psychologist does a lot of training in, understanding people's behavior, understanding the working of the mind, understanding how people learn, and they sort of put all that together. Very good at diagnosing, as is a psychiatrist as well. But a psychologist will use a lot of diagnostic tools to come up with a diagnosis of depression, or you've got anxiety, or whatever that might be. But again, they can't give medication. They work more in fields of organisations. A lot of people in HR might have a psychology degree, but yeah, that sort of that base of diagnostic tools, assessments, those sorts of things to sort of diagnose you with something, and then we sort of go from there. A counsellor is more about what we call a person-centered approach. So a person who comes and sees me, the first thing I tell them is that, you may not know this right now because you are struggling with something. That's the reason why you're here, but you are the expert in your own life. You know more about your life than what I ever will, right? But something's not right. You're stuck. Life's not going anywhere. Maybe you're having some, relationship issues. Maybe you're just having second thoughts about your career. Maybe you've got this imposter, that sits on your shoulder, and your life is shrinking because of it. Your life is not as rich and meaningful as it could be. And you're just simply not the person that you want to be. You know that there's more to you than what you're presenting with at the moment. So a counsellor, by its very nature, is what we call a talk therapy. You talk and I listen, and I'm trained to listen really hard to what you're saying so that I can present things in a different way, to get you to think about things in a different way. So Matt, we call that reframing. So how can I reframe what you're saying so that you see it differently? But ultimately, at the end of the day, a counsellor will use their listening skills to hear what the problem is, talk through options about a way forward, and also work on strategies to get you there. And as a counsellor, we all have different what we call modalities or interventions that we use. I'm what's called an ACT therapist. So I use acceptance and commitment therapy. Other people use cognitive behavior therapy or narrative therapy or expressive therapies. It really just depends what resonates with you. I find ACT, as I said, acceptance and commitment therapy. I see the world through ACT. It's such a wonderful framework. Probably we don't have time to go into it with this episode, but it's certainly a framework that I use on every single client that I see. But at the end of the day, my job is to try and get that client that sees me a more rich and meaningful life.
I don't mean any disrespect by this at all, and please don't take this the wrong way, but with my issues over the last 10 to 12 years of anxiety and depression, counsellor's never been recommended to me. It's always straight to the psychologist. Like, you should go see a psychologist, or you need to go down this path. I feel like
I've got to say
listening.
the same. I don't think any time I've sought out support that any doctor has recommended a counsellor.
No.
And I think from what you've explained there, it's probably something that is missing, right?
Yeah.
Because, and I'm sorry to jump over the top,
No,
mate, but my first appointment when I first sought out professional help with a psychiatrist, and he was very, very quick to prescribe medication. Listened, didn't really give me any feedback, and said, here's some medicine. And then I was on my way. Fortunately, I had a very close friend that said to me, you should see a psychologist. So I made an appointment. I had the script and I went and saw a psychologist. And that psychologist said to me, what he's done is he probably didn't articulate it with you at all, but he's given you some medication to help you immediately. Stabilise. But then she said, I'd imagine he would have then started to have some other conversations with you. But because of the way he presented, I wasn't comfortable, so I stayed with her for other reasons as well. But, it was really interesting. But a counsellor, I think, and you talked about acceptance. What was the phrase? ACT, but it was acceptance, commitment. I think acceptance is a really important word in itself. So, yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that in the future as well.
100%. And, mate, we could probably have 12 episodes breaking down what you do. But here's the thing, and this is why I'm so passionate about it, and this is why I'm so keen to work with you and do this podcast, is when I have my bouts of anxiety and it gets quite bad and I have to take time out and go on medication, stuff like that, it's only then when I really act on trying to improve my mental health. Because I want to be fixed, I want to get back to normal and just carry on with life. I think what you do and what you offer is more of an approach to mental health consistently, not when you're just in trouble, but training your brain and helping you to achieve goals and set goals for yourself. But do that over a period of time and not just when you're in trouble, when you're suffering from anxiety or depression. For me, that's what I'm going to be working on personally with the way I'm going to be treating my anxiety or my mental health going forward. Is I'm now looking for something that I want to do regularly, whether that's, and you're the best person to tell us, David, but whether that's monthly, quarterly, whatever it is, but making sure that I have a connection with a counsellor, because a counsellor's never come into the dynamics with me. I've just gone straight to doctor, GP, set me up a psychologist, wait 2 months to try and see a psychologist when I need help now, but it's too late. I'm in that hole. But yeah,
and the word reframing, I do that reasonably naturally. But sometimes you still need to seek out someone that can help you reframe.
Yep.
Because there's positives in everything. And that reframing can help you find that positive scenario.
Yeah, I mean that's one technique, Topher, that you can use, and I might just go back to the points that you're making. I can remember the day, and it was just when COVID hit. Okay, and I'm about a kilometre from my house. I'm coming home, and I've got ABC radio on. I listen to ABC radio because I'm old, right? You're old when you listen to ABC radio.
I'm 2GB.
I've started turning on ABC in the car.
And I'm listening to this interview with the head of Brisbane North Hospital, and he's the head of the psychology department, and he was saying that it is 6 to 8 months for a person to see a psychologist, and I'm going, what? Like, what sort of, like, people who are needing immediate help or indeed medium to short to longer term help, I can see how that might be a bit of a backlog. But if you're having a bout of anxiety or depression, or you're just really stuck at the moment and life is not treating you kindly, to think that I've got to wait 6 to 8 months, well, I just couldn't believe it. I said, is that the best our health mental health suppliers or providers can do. And that really motivated me to say, well, maybe what's my part in this? And
So how do you get around that though? Would you then have to get acute care like that? Would you then have to go to hospital, get assessed to try and get that acute care to try and bypass that
I
weight?
think so.
well, it was funny. Well, I remember just staying with that interview, and people started to ring up saying, "Have you heard of this thing called counselling?" Like there are counsellors out there that you can see tomorrow if they've got a spare day, that will give you the necessary help that you need right now. And a lot of people think, and again, this is the reason why we're doing this stuff. A lot of people think their first foray into mental health is a psychologist, and it's not. I mean, counsellors are there to help you. I mean, you think about when there's a natural disaster in the world, or there's something happens. I mean, you'll always hear on the news saying, "Oh, they're getting counselling, or they're getting grief counselling, or they get sent in as the very first thing, because a counsellor is trained to listen with empathy, and that's all a person may need at that very point in their life, is to be understood, to be heard, and for someone to just take the time to hear their struggle. And I think that's what counsellors are very, very good at. We're trained to listen, we're trained to provide empathy, and say, you know what, that must be really, really tough for you. I can see how you're struggling at the moment. And for someone just to hear those words is healing in itself. And you don't need a psychologist first up. If you want to get diagnosed, if you want to get further help, fine. Wait in line, wait your 6 months, wait your 8 months, go on your mental health plan from your GP and wait in line. But that's the reality. The waiting lists all around Australia are that long. But counsellors are trained. They're trained to listen. They're trained to be empathetic. They're trained to look at options with you, and to provide that support that you need at that moment.
With that in mind, obviously, there's been times where I've reached out to someone I know, but instead of really getting any quality feedback, they just say, "Oh, you know what you need to do? You need to
go for a walk.
Go for a walk, and it'll be fine."
Get some sun.
And you're like, "Well, I need more than that."
Yeah.
So,
or go and have a beer.
Not necessarily convince people, but how do we get people to make sure they seek out the right people?
This is the thing. I can probably answer that, and I can probably maybe fill in a bit of gaps with that. But hearing what you just said, David, is, to me, what I just heard from you is a first step. So if you're going through some problems, whether it's, on a scale of 1 to 10, whether it's a 1, a 5, or a 10, right? If you're saying to your partner or your family, "Hey, look, I'm not going so well. I've reached out to a counsellor. I'm going to go see a counsellor to have a chat." To me, that is such a significant step forward before it gets to, say, if you're at a 1 to a 5 to a 10 or whatever. But hearing how you can help people, David, or counsellors in general, my mind's blown, because for me, that's a first step. If I break it down now and look back and step backwards, I would see that as a first step. Maybe go and see a GP and tell them what's going on. Maybe not get the medication straight away, or go, "Hey, I want to go talk to someone that maybe we can break it down and dissect it before I have to go down that path of waiting 6 months or whatever it is to go and see a psychologist, or have to go up to hospital because I just can't handle it anymore." I think your role is actually quite an integral part to the whole process. I really do.
Yeah, and the thing about the GP part of it too, Chris, is that a GP may not necessarily provide a referral to a counsellor, because they're not part of the medical system. Does that make sense? We're not an allied health professional, so they will probably just say, "Well, here's some contacts for psychologists. Off you go." And then you start hitting the phone, and all of a sudden you get very, very dejected, going, "My God, it's going to take me 6 months before I even get in the door. This is crazy." So, but you don't have to go and see a GP. If you're feeling down, if something isn't right and you're feeling stuck, and you just notice that, again, you're not the person that you want to be, you're not living the life that you thought you would lead, A counsellor is a great spot. And Topher, you're exactly right. You'll talk to mates and they go, "Oh, just don't worry about it." Probably the most useless mental health words you could ever use to anybody is "don't worry about it."
Yeah, or relax. Yeah, or relax. Or you're not going to jail, so why are you stressing? I've heard that as well.
Why are you stressing over that? Yeah,
yeah.
You know, and to a person's mind that's struggling, that it is simply, let's not use that ever again. But to say, well, why don't you go and see? And the first thing I do when a new client sits in front of me is I say, I just want to thank you for your bravery, because first of all, you've recognised that something isn't right in your life. The second thing is you've Googled me and you've found me. The third thing is you've actually made an appointment. The fourth thing is you've kept your appointment. You've driven here. You've got out of the car and you've walked through this door and you've sat opposite me. Congratulations. Well done, and thank you so much for your bravery. And they're looking at me as if I'm from outer space. They go, you've done all of these things and there are strengths behind all of those actions that you took to be here today, and you probably didn't even think of it. We're well on the way to recovery because I'm going to draw out those strengths for you.
I love that. I really do. I really do.
So what if we shift to vulnerability a bit, right? So men don't like to reach out. And I read a stat that, and I'm not sure if this included counsellors because it was an allied health report, that only 24.7% of men will actually seek out support. So why is there still this hesitancy to not only reach out to your friends and family, but then to go that step of a counsellor, psychologist, psychiatrist? Why does this hesitancy still exist?
I think there's two parts to that, Topher. I'm going to bring in some ACT therapy here, some acceptance and commitment therapy, and but I'll do that second. The first thing is we're just conditioned. There's a genderization of men that starts from when we're young. We play in different circles. We're aggressive in the sandpit and all those sorts of things. Through our teen years, we're told to toughen up, to don't show our emotion, big boys don't cry, all of that, So it's a gradual drip feed of don't show anybody that you're hurting, right? Because we just simply don't do that. I even pull up my 17-year-old son. He plays soccer at a high level, and if, two players go down on the field, my son would get up and I'd see him talking to the other player on the ground. And when he comes off the ground, I say, Zach, what did you say to him? And I said, get up, you pussy. And I'm like, really? Why do you want to say that to him? Why is he less than you by falling down or whatever it might be? So even on the sporting field, we have this, this reinforcement of this genderization of what we should be as tough young men. And even, and there's also this sort of great departure of this wonderful, institution that we used to see in tribes all around the world with this initiation, this passing from boyhood to manhood. We don't have that in Western society anymore. Some tribes, it's scarring, and I'm not saying we do that, but you get what I'm saying. There's this pathway that we go through from boyhood to manhood, and it's distinct characteristics and behaviour, and in the tribe that you've now passed to that other world. But in our modern world, what do we have? Facebook, cars, just proving our manhood. We join gangs and do all this other stuff to try and become a man, and again, it's all about not showing those vulnerabilities. Now, if I answer the second part of the question, a lot of it in ACT looks at what we call our caveman mind. Now, you think about our minds haven't changed for 200,000 years. It's exactly the same mind we had when we were in caveman land, so to speak, right? Now, you think about that. When you're in a tribe, when you're comparing yourself in a tribe, if you're not in a tribe, it means you're not going to survive, right? So tribe means that you're going to survive, because if you didn't catch food that day, someone else in the tribe did, and we're going to share that food. So you live another day, all right? But if we are vulnerable in that tribe and we're not contributing to that tribe, then there's a chance that we're going to get ousted by comparison. So you think about that in a modern world. If we're open and honest and vulnerable, to a bunch of blokes, all of a sudden we're like, hang on a minute, I'm not part of this bloke kingdom anymore. I'm an outsider because I've shown vulnerability. I'm an outsider because I'm weaker. So it's I think we have a natural ability as men to compare ourselves. We compare the size of our houses and our cars and our jobs, our wives, all sorts of things, our possessions. That's what we do. That's what men do because we're just really, I guess, scared of being ousted. If we're together, if we feel connected, we feel safe. But if we don't, then again, that 200-year-old mind just says, hey, if you show that vulnerability, they're going to kick you out of here, and you're not going to survive the next day. So there's a real reptilian part of us that prevents us from being vulnerable.
Interesting.
And that generational stuff, the man of the family, do we put that pressure on ourselves?
Oh, completely. 100%. Yeah, 100%. So, you think about when things happen to you, lose jobs or you get divorced or whatever. I mean, the natural thing is just get back on the horse, find that job again, get the next girlfriend, get the next wife, and the continual pressure to provide, to do the role that I'm meant to do as a man, to provide, to conquer, to survive every day. That caveman mind we bring to a modern world, but it's not about survival anymore. We are safe in our, largely safe in our communities. So, we just sort of turn to other things. So again, part of the work that you guys are doing, which is so valuable, is to say it's okay to be vulnerable. Without that vulnerability, we cannot heal. It's that simple. We must bring that vulnerability. But I think the trick to doing this is just start small. You don't have to go out with your mates and do a big, mind dump on, on how you're feeling, or like they look at you as if you're from outer space. But again, start with that one person. Start with that mate that you can have a hard conversation with and a difficult conversation with. Just do that, and nurture that relationship.
More than likely, they're experiencing the same thing. They just haven't spoken to anyone.
Because they're probably the same. They're like, I don't want to show my vulnerability either.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
If you're all vulnerable together, there's a whole new tribe.
100%. That's right. Exactly, Topher. Exactly. I mean, I used to do this stuff with my mates. We used to call it the fork and talk. And we go out, the four of us every couple of months, and we'd sit around, at a pub somewhere and have a counter meal. And one day I'm just like, I'd lost a job. My friend of mine, his family was going through some horrible things with his daughters, and another guy just had a heart attack, and another guy, I forget what was, and yet we had all this rich stuff to talk about. We all knew what was going on, but hey, how about those Broncos? It's just, are we kidding each other? But you look at four women around a table, and they're having good, rich, hard conversations, and they feel supported. But, we're just really, really bad at doing this stuff.
Well, that's what we want to try and improve. And even if it's one step at a time or one listener at a time, whatever it is, that's what we're trying to bridge the gap with and try and close and just educate men that, it's okay to do that. I mean, we had our interviews yesterday and they were very full on. And we probably learnt stuff about each other that we didn't know about each other, and we've known each other for how long? 20 years. I don't want to say our ages, but so it's so important. It's so important to do that. So we're going to smash that down and break it down. And as I said earlier in the podcast, if it's not for you and you don't feel comfortable, then that's fine. But there are people out there that will listen to this and they'll hear the messages from what we're trying to get across and let them know that it's okay to talk.
And 9 times out of 10 as well, if you are vulnerable and you do share a bit of information, we think the world is going to fall down around us because we've shared that information. And 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't. The catastrophizing in your mind that says, oh, God, don't share that information. Don't share that part of you which opens you up to be vulnerable. The worrying and the catastrophizing around that, it just simply isn't there. It's not it's just not logical thinking. What are they going to think of me if I share this piece of information? God forsake, what if I cry? I mean, they're just going to think. But it's amazing what our natural human instincts will go to. We will comfort that person. We will. That's what we're wired to do, and that's what we've got to move.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when someone does open up, you tend to naturally wrap your arms around them, right? Whether verbally or in physically, but you do tend to rally and say, "Well, let's get through it together." Let's support.
And we're raising the stakes.
What do you need?
Yeah,
not.
Well, we're raising the stakes and we're offering commitment to people that want to come on this journey with us. Is that we're going to lay out a platform here for us to be able to provide those services, because we're all just regular guys and we've all got our experiences, and that's the whole purpose of doing this, is to go, bang, look, come and have a listen, see if it's for you. We've got contacts here that you can reach out to and provide these sort of services. So, mate, everything that you've spoken about resonates exactly with what we're trying to do here on the podcast. So.
Yep.
And mate, I've seen firsthand, when men, stoic men that have had, high profile jobs all their life, and they sit opposite me for the first time, and they pour out their heart about what's going on in their lives, and when I give them the opportunity to do that, and I just give them space to listen and just hold that space, and there's a lot of silence, there's a lot of support. Just that one instance where they've opened up, they've shown vulnerability, they might be crying by the end of it. And I often get men saying, you are the only person that I've ever told this to, and this has been a secret for me for, 30 years. The weight that comes off their shoulder, and as I check in and I say, I can actually see a difference in your body language. I can actually see a difference in the way that you're sitting in your chair. I can see a difference in the way you're holding yourself. And they look at me and go, I just don't know why it's taken me that long to tell someone, and I often say, mate, it's the secrets that make us sick. And it is. It's those secrets. So, even just one session that you can get that off your chest and talk to someone about it, is therapy in itself. And you'd be amazed at how much even that just shifts the dial. I may have not said a single thing in a whole hour. I've just let them talk.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned the word silence, and I know what's the power of silence, right? Because I know when I've had situations where I've had people talk to me, when I go silent and just let them talk, there's that awkward quiet period, and then they'll just keep talking again. Is that the way it should be?
Oh, 100%, Topher. Silence is just a gift, but you've got to be comfortable. As a counsellor, I've got to be very comfortable with it. And when to come in and when not to. Again, that's what we're trained to do. But just to have that client sit with their feelings and sit with, a good counsellor will say something like, what are you feeling right now? What's showing up for you right now? Or what's your mind telling you now? And for them to be able to verbalize that as well. Oh, my mind's telling me that, my God, why haven't I told someone about this? What was so hard about that? Or, so to again, a good counselor will be trained in bringing those thoughts out. Tell me what you're thinking. What are you feeling at the moment? What are the sensations that you're feeling? Where is that showing up even in your body? So that, a way that we can get really connected is, as you're being vulnerable, a good counsellor will say, things like, is where in the body are you feeling it? Are you feeling it in your stomach or your chest? Or are you feeling it in your throat? So you can get really clear about how this emotion is affecting you. And the more we can bring it out and verbalize it and experience it in a mindfulness state, there's real healing in that.
I've actually mentioned to you in the past psychologist sessions I've gone. So when I have my anxiety, I suffer physical symptoms as well. So I cop it both. So I get the physical and I get the mental, what's going in my head. And it's only this last psychologist that I've gone to see, and prior to this was 5 years since I had any anxiety, and a big part of that was giving up alcohol and not drinking and stuff like that, because I felt that it contributed to that mental state. So 5 years, the last 5 years, I didn't have a problem with anxiety. Life's just gotten on. I've raised 2 kids in that sort of 5 year period, and when it came up again, I'd forgotten the practices that I learned how to cope. So, I'd go to, this time around I went to a GP. GP's like, yep, look, I think you should go see a psychologist. I'm like, great. Like what you were saying before, I made some phone calls. I called people that didn't even work at these practices anymore. They'd left 6 months ago. And then I finally got one. And this guy's been really great, but it took me a little while to get in to see him. It took me like 6 weeks. I mean, that's good listening to what the stories you're saying there. When I had that first session and I let it all out with that first session I had with him, I felt like $1 million because I had a chance to talk to him. And I'll go back to it again. Where I think you're so important with the process is that you can intervene in those very early stages and really on a more consistent basis. And I can't stress that enough. And, man, I'm going to scream your services down. I'm going to be telling everyone about it, mate, because there are a lot of people out there that I know that have spoken to me one-on-one and said, hey, what should I do here and what should I do there? And I've said, go see a GP or book in to see a psychologist. That's all going to change. And I can't thank you enough for sharing all that stuff with us, because it's only, how long have we been on for? 50 minutes. But the insight that you've provided, in my head, changes the whole dynamics of it all. It really does. And I'm really excited to see where this goes. And I wish we had, 2 hours to sit down and do this. But, mate, we want to get you on as a regular guest, and we see you as a regular spot, as a co-host here and interviewing people. We know that you have your own platform for podcasts that we've listened to, a really good one with Scott Draper, that I found very interesting, because I said to Chris, and one of the guests we had on yesterday started talking about OCD, and we both said to each other, we hear the term, I've just got OCD about doing this and that, and that's a very, I find that be insulting to someone that actually does have chronic OCD. So what we want to do is try and break that down. But look, I think we've covered a lot today, which has been really good. What I want to do before we finish up is throw to you to give your business a plug and tell guys how they can get in touch with you, the best ways via the website, however it may be. We'll also post it on our website for future reference, where we can guide people to go and have a chat to you first. But unless you had any other questions, we'll throw over to you, mate. How can people get in touch with you, and how can we support you, and then you can support in turn our listeners?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate your support. And again, thanks for inviting me on. And again, if we could just move that dial. If the takeout today is, never thought about a counsellor, I'll go and see a counsellor then. Great. That's what we want people to do, because they are there. They're a great service. And as a talk therapy, as a way to just sit there and just say what you've got to say as a first option, take it, because it's worth it. It really is. How do people get in contact with me? bettermancounselling.com. There's an inquiry form there if you'd like to set up a discussion, whatever it might be. If you want to directly email me, it's David at Better Man Counselling. So Better Man. I'm thankful that Pearl Jam hasn't run me out of the country, but anyway, it was the first song I thought of.
Robbie Williams. Chris was singing Robbie Williams this morning. He's like, who sings that song? And I said, Robbie Williams. He's like, yeah.
It's Robbie Williams. Someone said the other day it was a Better Man with something else as well. I think it was John Butler Trio. I think has got Better Man.
Yeah.
It's one of them other knocking on my door. But anyway, bettermancounselling.com. I do Zooms and over the internet, and I do sessions as well. So that
was going to be one of my questions as well. Is listeners are obviously all around Australia. the availability to do stuff over Zoom and obviously remote with everything that's happened in the last couple of years has obviously made that a little bit easier. So I'm sure you have those facilities to be able to do that as well. So
and occasionally I'll say some words of wisdom on LinkedIn and Instagram and so on. So just follow me on Better Man Counselling on all the socials. So yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you very much, David.
Yep. We'll also chuck some information in the episode guide as well to click on. And mate, I can't say it, hand on heart, we really appreciate you coming on board and really following us up, really. I mean, we've had so much going on and you've always been there saying, guys, here, have this, look at this, look at this. Mate, we really can't do it without the support like yourself. And you're a part of the furniture for this podcast. And mate, we can't wait to see where this goes. And maybe, next year we can all be sitting on the Gold Coast doing a couple of podcasts up on the Gold Coast and having a chat out there.
Sounds good to me. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Topher. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.